What I want at Mars Hill is men. I'm going to say it as plain as I can. Did I say I don't want women and children? That's not what I said. But women and children with men who abandon or abuse or avoid, that's not nice for women. Ask a single mother how nice it was that the man abandoned his obligations. Ask a woman who's getting beaten by her husband how much she would like someone to be stronger than him and to give him the truth. See, I think the nicest thing we can do for women, the nicest thing we can do for children, is to make sure that the men are like Christ. In a good way. In a loving, dying, serving way. Pouring themselves out. That's why I get frustrated when I see churches that have enormous children's ministries and enormous women's ministries and no men. Because what they have is they're hiring people to study the Bible and pray with the ladies, and they already have Christian husbands. And the husbands should be doing that. And they're hiring youth pastors who are 20 years old to babysit kids who are 17 years old because those kids want to love the Lord and study the Bible, but they have Christian fathers, and their fathers aren't doing that. The issue is, well, if you have a Christian dad, shouldn't he be having these sort of Proverbs conversations around the dinner table with his kids? Am I saying women's ministry sin or children's ministry sin? No. Am I saying that they are a sin if the men are not doing their job and we're trying to work around the men and avoid our responsibilities to confront the men and abandoning the things that Scriptures call us to for women and children? Yes, then it's sin. Then it's sin. I will be devastated if there is a Christian woman in this church who all of a sudden comes to me and says, I don't have anyone to pray with, and my children don't have anyone to answer their Bible questions, and she has a Christian husband. I'll be devastated. I'll be absolutely destroyed. Because that's not only his duty, that's his privilege. He's supposed to be a cultivator. He's supposed to cultivate that woman and those kids and this life and this ministry and this wonderful opportunity. And if he abandons or avoids or abuses that, then no amount of programming or effort on behalf of this church can make up for his sin. We can't make up for him. I'll close with this picture for the men from Proverbs 14:4. If you're like me and you're visual, maybe this will make sense. Proverbs 14:4 says, where there are no oxen, the manger is empty, but from the strength of an ox comes an abundant harvest. Maybe this will make sense for the men. Guy goes out and says, I need to be a man. I need to get myself a piece of land, agrarian society. All of a sudden, the guy's out there plowing his land, trying to cultivate it, get rid of the thorns and thistles and grow something, and he realizes, this is hard work. He starts thinking, I need an ox. I need an ox. So he goes and gets himself an ox, and then he builds a barn to house his ox. And the first thing he realizes is that the ox is very helpful for sort of tilling and cultivating and creating a harvest, but that the ox also has a very negative downside. You put food in an ox, and it doesn't come out of the ox exactly the same as it went in the ox. It's much more pleasant going in than it is coming out. The ox is a machine that does very interesting things to nourishment. And so all of a sudden, he goes out to his barn and he realizes that his barn is not just filled with the ox, it's filled with some of the ox's contributions to the barn. I'll just use that language. I would say some other words, but then I'd get lots of emails. So I'll just say that. And so what the man determines is, I need to get myself a shovel to go scoop all the things that are amassing on the floor under my ox in my barn. And as the guy is sitting there scooping, he realizes that he's going to be doing this how often? Every day. For how long? Forever. And so he doesn't know Proverbs, so he thinks to himself, maybe I could avoid this. Maybe I'll just leave the ox in the barn and I won't scoop. How does that work? He goes out there a year or two later. The ox is living on top of the barn because all of the stuff is piled up higher than the barn. And the poor ox is now 15 or 20 feet off the ground, just standing on his own feces. The ox has created a real problem because the man has not done his job. What that man does then, he calls Mars Hill and he panics and he wants all the rest of us to get our shovel and come over and clean out his barn. Because he has not been tending to his own stuff. Some of you men are very weak and you don't like to shovel all the time, and you come to church looking for other men to come over and shovel your barn. You shovel it. You say, but it's really high. Well, you should be well rested. You apparently haven't been exercising and working out and shoveling, so you should be well rested and up to the task. Well, this is going to take years. Keep shoveling. That's your barn. That's your ox. God bless you. Here's your shovel. Another guy comes along and he says, well, we do have other options. Maybe if you beat that ox, he wouldn't do that anymore. He's abusive. Not going to avoid it. Maybe we just yell at the ox and beat him until he stops dropping things on the floor. We don't like that mess. So he gets out his shovel, and rather than scooping, he uses it to beat his ox. Come to find, though, no matter how hard he beats the ox still keeps going. Third guy comes along and says, well, let's just kill the ox. That'll fix it. If you kill the ox, then the barn will be clean. And then you won't have to scoop any more stuff. Is that a wise choice? No wisdom in that at all, because if you kill the ox, what happens to your fields? Nothing. And you're not cultivating or building anything. So here's your goal, men, out of Proverbs 14:4. You have two goals you could pursue in life. One is a clean barn. If you want a clean barn, then you are not a man. You're not cultivating, you're not working, you're not doing anything, but your barns are clean because you don't have anything going on. I would not encourage you to seek a clean barn. What I would encourage you to do is keep shoveling. Those are your options. Your options are, I want a clean barn, or your option is, I want a shovel. Give me my shovel, let me shovel. Does that analogy make any sense for the men? Do you ever get up and look at your life and say, there is just dung everywhere, and I feel like I'm always shoveling? I am always shoveling. Anyone feel like that? Tomorrow's Monday, you're all going to wake up and you're going to go, yes, I know now. It stinks and it's all over, and I have my shovel, and the ox is bigger than me, and I don't think I'm ever going to catch up. That's your life. That's your life. A lot of guys hit that and they say, well, I'm going to go into ministry. I'm telling you. I have got about 1,000 oxen, okay? There's always something in my barn. There's no shortcut. Let me ask you this, though, guys. As you shovel, do you not feel like that is what you were made for? I'm a man. This is good. I'm doing my job. We're making progress. I'm fighting the good fight. Good. That's what you're built for. Keep shoveling. And as you do, what you will find is the gospel makes more sense. Why does the ox keep doing this to me? And God's like, that's the question I've been asking you, you dumb ox. You've been messing up my barn. Now you know how it feels. And it brings a man to a place of humility and surrender, and he realizes he needs Jesus to be a warrior for him to conquer Satan's sin and death on the cross. That he needs Jesus to be a wise sage, teaching him, nurturing him, leading him, guiding him, imparting wisdom so he knows how to live. And a cultivator who's continually working, never giving up. Aren't you glad Jesus doesn't abuse us, take the shovel, and just whack us? Some of you say, well, Mark does that. I know, but not Jesus. Jesus doesn't do that. Aren't you glad that Jesus doesn't just abandon us like, well, I said I loved you and it was a lot of work and there's stuff all over the barn, I'm leaving. Aren't you glad that Jesus doesn't avoid us and say, well, I don't like scooping, so I'm not going to hang out with these dumb ox. And a man starts to learn a lot about the gospel as he throws himself into his tasks. Okay, I want the men to pray with me, and I want the men to stand, and I'll pray for them. We'll close with this. We'll take communion, take our offering. I want the men to stand. We're going to pray for you.